One thought that I had while I was writing the presentation I'm doing next week is I think there's been, or at least the question came up for me of like, what is an online community or an on-chain community in the first place? Like, does it have to be a certain thing to be a Web3 community or an on-chain community? And the way I think about online communities is it's really just any community that uses the internet to connect. Like, it's actually that simple. Like if like Taylor Swift has a global community, right? They probably congregate somewhere online. Like that's an online community. Might meet up IRL, but like still an online community. And in that same way, I think just about every community in the world, not just like what we think of as like an online community, will be an on-chain community one day, and use these economic primitives. So anyway, I just want to set that
No,
stage.
okay.
That's like how I think
I
about
have
it.
an additional thought. So, like for example, you say this Taylor Swift, all these Taylor Swift fans online are the online community of for Taylor Swift, but like, would you still call it a community if they're not aggregated in like a single place, right? Like all these Taylor Swift fans are like scattered all over the place. All they have in common are, they're fans of Taylor Swift, but there's no space for them to aggregate. Is that specific aggregation point? Is that what's called the community, or are you referring to the community as like this non-existent? Um, it like still exists, but like it's non-existent in like a single point.
Maybe a more accurate word is like a fandom or an audience than necessarily a community. But I personally don't think a community, like I don't think everyone has to know everyone in a community. Like I think like
Right.
Christianity itself, for example, is one giant community, even though different churches, right, are not necessarily talking to one another. And I'm sure it's the same with Islam, right? And to me, that's still a community, and they don't have to know each other. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree with that. You can have different mini communities within a larger community, but at the end of the day, they're all one community. They all share the same interests. I think what defines a community is that of a shared interest, right? Whether there's
Yeah.
a meeting point or not, I think a community is just like a group of people that share an interest.
I think it's like any group of people that feel a sense of belonging to one another. So like a one that like I always use as an example is like I'm a huge Arsenal fan, and any Arsenal fan that I meet in person, I feel like is a part of my community. I have many friends that
Okay.
like we have developed relationships just because like we first were like, oh, we're Arsenal fans together, and so we like share this bond with one another, and then it grows into like a relationship. And I would say like that is one of many communities that I'm a part of.
Yeah, that
So like
makes sense. I see. I
and like
don't, this
again
is
like
a little bit of a side tangent, but what do you guys think of like when you're meeting new people, building friendships, creating relationships? Do you think from like an underlying point of view that we're looking for people within the same community as us to connect with?
I would say
Good
probably
question.
not. Like I don't think they need to be a part of a community that I'm a part of. It's nice to like have a community, and like I think a community is more about like more than one, right? Like if it's just a relationship I'm building, I don't need to have some sort of community overlap. I can have a relationship with them. It's nice to know that we have some again, like I think community and like I think like okay, so the way to distinguish it is like me as a person trying to have a relationship with somebody does not make it a community. It's like a group of people with like a shared belief or like a shared belonging that makes it a community. Not every one of my relationships is community centric, but
Okay.
my communities have some sort of relationships with part of that community.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it generally with friendships, like I tend to connect with people that have shared interests with me as me, like, oh my God, you're also a Drake fan, so am I. And then it kind of builds that friendship. And because I've identified they're part of a single community that I'm in, right? But anyways, like moving forward, if we go in and look at what Farcaster has built in terms of their community, I just wanted to bring this up as like a talking point. I think maybe now it's a bit different, but like before early Farcaster days when there was like maybe like 1,000 users on Farcaster, um, there was like a slight segregation of like, obviously most Farcaster users are Web3 users, are like Web3 people. So there was like that inner circle of like the most active people on Farcaster probably consisted of like 20, 30 people. And then like all these new people that are coming in, I guess felt hard. It felt like that it was hard to like get into this new community. Because like every time I try like to encourage some of my people, like friends that I know that are also in Web3 to join Farcaster, they ended up like they stopped using it because they were like, I don't know anyone on there, and like I found it hard to connect because everyone already felt connected inside. Do you think that's still there? I feel like it still exists, that like core community, like core mini community in Farcaster. But do you think like, do you agree with that? Like, what do you think about like that whole scope there with like that small core that's hard to break into?
Go ahead, Matt.
Well, I agree with what Sam just said in the chat. Like, I do think it's hard for people to engage because they don't feel like they're into crypto, and it definitely had a crypto bent early on. I actually think now it's like very not much a crypto bent,
Yeah.
but it definitely was that. I personally think that they're not doing as great of a job as preserving that like initial community right now. And I know it's like they're going all in on channels, and like they should do that because that's going to make the network work. But yeah, personally, like I felt a little bit disconnected the last few months, just like noticing the emphasis on channels for one giant feed of everyone just kind of talking to each other. And maybe I'm just not talking enough in channels, but that's my experience.
Yeah, I think sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think Dan kind of recognizes that, like, if you look at like what he tried to do early on, it was just like be very selective of like what people you bring in, and like those are the people that start that initial community. Also, like very frankly, like Matt, you and I did a lot of meetups in a lot of these places, which helped actually grow the community. Like that was a part of that effort. Like we were one of the early people like doing meetups, hanging out, like creating that sense of community. It is harder now that like it scales. Like this is a problem that basically like any company, any organization, any group of people faces. As it gets bigger, it's just hard to sort of keep that same level of like unity and affinity. I don't think there is any solution to that problem other than like if you look at a company, like let's say you work at like a big company, the people you really care about is just like the 12 people around you. And it's actually okay to have these like pockets of like sub communities, as long as it feels like there's like sort of like a central belief or central sort of like thing for us to like come around. Again, I think goes back to the same thing Matt said, like Christianity, Islam, like that is the larger sort of community, but then you have sub communities among that. I think that's a very classic sort of thing. And I think like that's why Farcaster sort of decided to double down on channels, because I think they realized it was the only option.
I think channels, there's a lot of scope that still has been untouched with channels. And I think, you know, in the beginning of Farcaster early days, I was posting a lot more because I like a close-knit community, right? There's a close-knit small community in Farcaster, like the same 20, like I told you, 20, 30 people that were like engaging with each other. And slowly as that expands, like I kind of also lost interest in posting. I don't know why. I just feel like now that whatever I'm posting is not really hitting those same people and not getting that same sort of engagement. So I feel like these channels are a way to reignite some of those small close-knit communities. I feel like I could have an identity in a specific channel rather than on Farcaster as a whole now. Whether it's like let's say a channel on like music, right? Like Drake. I don't know, I'm not even a Drake fan. I just keep saying Drake, but Drake, right? Like if I continuously post in that channel, I kind of build up that identity and I'm with that close-knit group of people within that channel. So I feel like that's the purpose of why they launch channels, but I still like it's still getting there. It's not at that peak point yet.
I feel like the community strategy worked early on for Farcaster, but like it's questionable whether it's going to continue to work because communities are really hard to scale, and like maybe it does just become sort of like a protocol and like a developer tool and like an ecosystem, and like that's actually what helps it grow. But like, again, also there are more communities than just Farcaster, so we can stop talking about Farcaster and talk about just like communities in general. But I feel like that the community thing worked early on, but it's probably maybe not the winning strategy going forward.
If you go to a crypto event, Farcaster meetup is there. Everyone on Farcaster goes to this meetup, okay? You end up meeting people one-on-one, building up a personal connection, and you end up taking that personal connection off of Farcaster. Like I'm chatting with them on Telegram instead of interacting with them on Farcaster.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
So what I'm saying is with those sort of events, like meetups, I feel like in a way it is a community building event, but at the same time, if these interactions are being taken off of the community platform, is it really a community building meetup, right? Like should there be different sort of events?
Well, it depends on what you're trying to maximize for, right? Like does maximizing a Farcaster person gaining a community, does that have to also maximize Farcaster? I would say like it doesn't have to. Like if people want to go and create their own community and do whatever they want outside, but that's up to them. Like it's actually okay if they go off Farcaster, right? Like I don't think that those have to sort of do hand in hand. And like I said, the communities don't scale. It's a classic problem. And like it might work for a certain stage, but then after that, like kind of move on from that strategy.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, right? I think the point of meetup is to meet other people and make those connections. But if you want to keep the community strong online, how do you do that? There's more than that.
I feel like people have been trying to figure that out for literally decades.
See, these people, I have some comments that have been like pretty interesting. Like Sam says, you know, like that activity badge on Farcaster, she feels like she needs to like constantly post to maintain that badge. Does that take away from like the intention of the community, right? Like to hold up that certain reputation.
Wait, I wonder if maybe they can respond, but I wonder, like, do you actually think about that, Sam? Because maybe I've just posted so much.
I agree with.
Have to.
I think the same way.
Like I never think about this.
I never.
And I haven't lost my active badge ever.
Because like I haven't posted it so long. I'm like, oh my god, am I gonna lose this badge? I don't know how the badge works.
Yeah. It could be well, I think Sam has a lot of followers too. Maybe it's a function of followers following. I don't know, but I feel like there should be some way of determining. Oh no, am I frozen?
No, I see you.
Oh, okay. I feel like that. Yeah, they need some good way of determining like who is an active human here. Like to me, that's what the point of the active badge should be. It's like who is like it's a verification on Twitter. Maybe that's not exactly what they were trying to go for, but I don't know. That's what I think it should be. But I wanted to go back because like I feel like something kind of has shifted Farcaster where I think a lot of the people in the chat, I see Sam and Sean and Tuofi, like I think a lot of us have met each other, right, at meetups. And if you go back like, 6 months or like 5 months or whatever, right, like NFT NYC, right, ETH Denver, at that point, the Farcaster community, pretty small, right, tight knit, we're all there because we liked Farcaster, right? And that I feel like that's a community that maybe we all want to stay in touch with because we all met one another and we all care about one another, hopefully at least. But as this grows, like to Tayyab's point, it becomes more of like a protocol network. But I still feel like I want to stay in touch with those people. Like I don't care about most people, quite frankly, that join Farcaster now or like in the future, unless I meet them and like I actually develop a relationship. I care about the specific group of people that we've known for the last year. And my hope is that there's some kind of community that gets started and preserved if it hasn't already for that group of people. Maybe it's the like under 10,000 FID thing. I don't know. Maybe it's just purple. Like that's my hypothesis, is that it's just going to become like purple essentially. But whatever that is, like that's that community. I really want that to be preserved. And like, that's the community I want to go and hang out with, like IRL, and maybe new people, right? But like, I want to stay in touch with those people.
Yeah.
And-
Like you're going to these meetups to meet these people you have a lot of interactions with, right? On Farcaster. And at that same time, you could think about it. I think that there's a certain limit, I feel like, to what a community is supposed to enable. And then from there, it's just beyond the community's purpose. So which I think is okay, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, what were you gonna
Ivy
say?
had a good question. Do people have predictions of what's going to happen with open signups? You guys have any thoughts?
Oh, that's tomorrow, right? That is going to be interesting. We'll get a bunch of spam. So at the protocol level, we're gonna get a shitload of spam because it's just gonna get airdrop farmers. I also don't know how many people are out there that are like going to be quality casters in general that like Dan didn't already sort of filter through. Because I mean, he's talked about it many times. He's like, I don't really see where new people are sort of going to be coming from. Quality, well, he calls like quality casters. So like, it might just look really spammy, and then really it's going to be up to like the client teams to be like trying to filter through and trying to find signal out of noise. Like that's what I imagine. It's just going to be absolutely fucking crazy.
At this point, I feel like the people I want to follow I only want to see the people I follow, and that should be emphasized so that I'm able to like sift through that signal from the noise. I'm interested in how they're going to do the quality control, like especially like I feel like the badge stuff is going to be a heavy role in that, like the active badge and like
Yeah. Wait, okay, this might be kind of a hot take, but I actually don't think they should have gone permissionless this quickly. I get the, we need to be unbiased, or maybe that's the wrong word. Like it needs to be permissionless in the sense of like as a decentralized protocol. Like I get it as a roadmap, but I don't think just letting anyone onto Warpcast that randomly joins the protocol is necessarily the right move. I actually, like, my hypothesis was that they were going to keep Warpcast invite only and just let other people join the protocol, but I don't know if that's what's going to happen. Ooh, Woofy disagrees.
I think this is like the thing where I kind of like, I think like what we're conflating is like the early Farcaster community and the protocol, and like I agree with you that you want it to have that like early sort of like Farcaster community feel. But at the same time, like Farcaster / Merkle Manufactory is a venture-backed company, and their goal is to get to 1 billion daily active users, or whatever the hell the number is. That means whoever wants community, you figure that out on your own. You make channels, you find your own, start a Telegram channel. This is meant to be a protocol. This is meant to be a thing where people share casts, and then people consume casts, and like this is what this is going to become. And I understand that like breaks all the like early sort of like this is what we want and this is what we feel, but like to go where they want to go and to what they sort of like signed up and like the journey they have to go in that direction. Like,
honestly, yeah, it's inevitable at this point. Like you have to grow some way or the other. So I don't like, obviously the quality is going to be a problem, but I feel like this is the point where mechanisms, I feel like token gating and badges will help drive quality and maintain the communities the mini communities that want to stay active on Farcaster. For example, like the early Farcaster community, if there was some sort of like token or badge that indicates that you're a part of the early Farcaster community, there could be a secluded channel for that, right? And have everyone that wants to stay in touch with each other, active with each other, they can all go under that channel and do so without having to drive away from that, the inflow of these new signups. I think it's just like, yeah, it's gonna, how we said in the beginning, like you have your overarching community and then your mini small communities inside of that. I think that's what's gonna happen now.
So I feel like you could make the same argument that you can make for like Ethereum and like app chains, or like the whole like monolithic versus like modular sort of like app chain thing. You can almost make the argument that like there's a possibility that that's what Farcaster becomes. So if like I only want to interact with my community, my caches go to like a specific chain ID version of hubs that is running its own system over here, and somebody can create their own little pocket over here, and then maybe there's like a main system. Because like I would love to have a private version of Farcaster where like only the people who I give access to can read it, rather than like anyone could read it. So you can imagine that this could go in many different directions, and I feel like all of those things are open. And I do think they have to basically put the community to the backseat if they want what they actually want. Though, is that going to work? I think we'll be yet to find out.
I think.
Yeah, I'm skeptical, honestly. I'm not so sure.
I feel like because
I'm humble enough to not know.
I feel like because
Yeah, well, no, me as well.
started off as like
Gosh.
no, I was saying like I think because Farcaster started off as like a Web3 mainly community, I think with this permissionless sign up, there's gonna be people from all over from different contexts coming in. I just like how
Will
do you
that be true though? Like Dan said, there was not a huge amount of people waiting to get in the door, and I'm guessing most of that wait list is airdrop farmers. Like, who's gonna join that couldn't have already joined? I just don't understand that.
that's what I'm
I think-
saying. Like
so-
people outside of Web3 are gonna start joining.
Really?
It's a,
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I think what attracts people to Farcaster early on, again, it was this exclusive club. I think that the people that are making the comments are absolutely correct. It has a clubhouse effect, which is like, hey, it's an exclusive club.
100%.
There's a bunch of people here. There's some interesting conversations happening here. I want in. But now that like exclusivity is out, I think like, again, it will go back to like, what is the best developer tool to build social protocols? Like that's what's going to make Farcaster succeed, not the community thing is going to go out of the door. And I think that's the direction they will go in, and they have to go in.
I want to talk about now, how are these DAOs, these DAO communities on Discord, are they still active? Because I literally have not opened Discord in so long.
I don't know.
Good question.
I don't know. I use Discord for
Well,
video gaming, like the original intention of Discord. And I do not use them anything for DAOs because it's like, what the fuck is this crazy ass like spam shit? Like I cannot handle it.
This is what I'm saying. Like
That's where I think Farcaster's opportunity is. Like, if they are just the best way for DAOs to stay in touch, get things done, like coordinate, I think that's actually really powerful. Like, look at how much more effective Purple was when we had notifications about proposals in Farcaster or in Warpcast. That was a huge change. Like, I think that focusing on that kind of thing. Sorry, I'm still on the last question, but
I agree with Matt. I actually think like that's what Farcaster has to focus on, where it's like just build like the Purple or like the Nouns DAO and like the whatever. Like it basically just becomes like it's what DSO wanted to be, which is like build these open social protocols and like here's the mechanism to do it. But now there's like actual users on top of it, and ideally like a user can like transfer among the different channels and among the different clients. And I think like, do you guys know David Furlong from Disco?
yeah.
I think he's building some like interesting stuff. I don't know. I literally have no alpha drop. Like, I think there's some interesting stuff that he's working on where like different channels, different groups of people can drop like plugins into your clients. And I think that that is a potential like angle to succeed, where it's like, hey, if you're Nouns DAO, you can do this. Or I think somebody mentioned Boys Club. Like Boys Club could very much adopt Farcaster as like a mechanism to keep in touch with each other. That's like not spammy as Discord.
Let me tell you guys something. So with these DAOs that were on Discord, I've taken like a lot of those relationships like off of Discord, and like now I talk to these people like on WhatsApp, Telegram. And it's still active. In that sense, the community is still active because I met these people in that community. But as a whole, how do you keep that? Like, is there supposed to be a specific medium? And is Discord still the answer for that? Because a lot of people are still like building their communities on Discord. I know we said Farcaster can be that new medium, but in what way? Like Warpcast, I think, is just that for Purple. I think someone had mentioned that in the chat.
maybe we can shift to like regardless of Farcaster, because Farcaster at the end of the day is just a tool for communities, of which Farcaster is one of them, right? But what, I guess, two-part question, like, what do these on-chain communities, whatever you want to call them, need going forward to be successful, right? Because I would argue that most of them are not successful currently, at whatever, however you want to define that. And then what does that future look like?
Obviously, in real life is a big part of it. I think 100% part of it. Like, Matt, you mentioned this with the whole Kawa House thing, right? In real life, workstations, or you could just hang out with people in your community. That, I think, will be necessary moving forward. But the problem with online communities is that it's so scattered. How do you...
I think like the question that Sand is asking, which is like, what's the metric for a successful on-chain community? Number one, there is no like single community metric that people can optimize for. Again, it's also the wrong thing to optimize for, because like, again, community is like this thing of like, hey, we just have a shared sense of belonging. Sometimes we hang out, sometimes we post stupid memes that we all get as like inside jokes, but like there's like a thing that like we care about, and maybe we want to maximize that thing, or we don't, right? Again, like Gaba House, right? Was a bunch of Muslims hang out there and there's a community around it, but like, are they maximizing for anything? I would say no. So like, I think like, it's more about like going back to like the very early part of what Ishika talked about, which is like shared interests. How can I find people who have other shared interests like I do? And how can I go meet with them in person or create relationships? Because like, again, not to get all sappy, but like we live in a loneliness epidemic. Like people are very alone in their lives. And it would be very nice if people could just find the people that they really want to hang out with. And maybe that's what we optimize for. It's like people having relationships. And like I think like DAOs cannot necessarily be called communities. I think there are communities that are DAOs, but there are many DAOs that are not communities, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I feel like that term on-chain, like what is an on-chain community? Like, I think on-chain is just quantifying that shared interest in as a commodity. And like you can be like, oh, you have this, I also have the same thing. Therefore, we have shared interest, and therefore we're an on-chain community.
The other part is like tokens really conflate this whole situation, because it's like Bitcoin holders are now, they have a shared vested interest to grow their communities so that their bags get bigger, right? Like tokens really kind of pervert this idea of communities. And the Bitcoin maximum is a great example of it. I mean, people in Solana and Cosmos would argue that Ethereum maximalism also has the same problem. So like there is a real big problem of like where we're trying to like, hey, like I want my community to grow and whatever, but really it's like, hey, I just want to get richer. And like it is sort of perverting this whole idea of like what a community is actually meant to be. So don't get me wrong, I think the Ethereum community has done great things, but I would argue they've done great things because they all have a shared interest in making sure that Ethereum, the Ether, the token, goes up in value. Have you guys read Life After Lifestyle by Toby Shorin?
I think it's the single most forwarded blog post I've sent to people.
It's literally amazing.
Yeah. I think that some form of that like is gonna really change the way, maybe not change the way, but it's really gonna come to affect the world. This idea that, you know, I think the central idea is that like community becomes the product in a lot of ways rather than just a marketing arm.
So I think about this quite a lot. I remember when I was running Kasama, like the thing that I like kept coming back to was like, okay, if we live in a world of open source software and it's all on chain, I can fork anything. If I want to run Farcaster and I want my own thing, all the code is available, all the smart contracts are available. I could fork it and I could only use it for my community. Everything that is available to a powerful group of people is available to me. The code is anyways. So what happens is like, I would say, hey, I just want my community to succeed. And so I'm just going to grab all of these powerful tools and we're going to adopt them. A great example is like all governments technically serve the same purpose, right? Like they're like, we want to maximize our people. We want everyone to be happy. We want defense, yada, yada, yada. And they all use similar tools to do it, which is military, like a central currency, some central planning, yada, yada, yada. I think that's kind of what happens with crypto, where you just pick your small community, you grab all these tools to like maximize benefit for them. And that there's a great Scott Commenter who works for A16Z, talks about like Web3 business models. And he ends up at the same conclusion. I'll see if I can share it real quick.
I 100% agree with this. Like it's any community that just uses on-chain primitives. And like this idea of Web3 as like a thing that's different than Web2, I think is going to completely disappear. In the same way we don't think of the web or web companies, which is companies, right? Like Barry's Bootcamp. You go to Barry's a bunch of times, you should have a status badge that updates on Ethereum that you can go and show all of your friends and say, look at me, I have this badge. Look at how many, what is it, bytes? Cycling, so I don't know what they're called them, but like sessions you go to, right? Like that kind of thing. Everyone does that already. Why is that not like that should just be on chain? And then like they're a community. They might not like know each other for the most part, but like there's still some kind of community, right, that uses on-chain primitives.
You have a solid thesis around this IRL community. I want to hear it. Like, what is your prediction for it, IRL communities?
Well, IRL communities in general, I just think the internet hasn't done as much as it can to help us build communities in the physical world. But I just think that it's going to continue to do more of that if we make it, right. Maybe we don't care about that, but like Tayyab said something really, I think, that there are these people that like the same things as we do, right? They're all around us, right? Like I think of Ethereum as an interest graph, right? A lot of us on Farcaster, right? We mint these random little things, right? Because we see them in our feed, and I can guarantee you, once they have in-feed minting, it's going to go way up, right? And now all of a sudden, if you look at my profile and your profile, we have a sense of what we like in the same way that if you go to someone's Twitter profile and look at their likes, you can kind of tell what they like and believe from what they've liked. Maybe not from what they've posted, but certainly what they've liked. And so if you can connect that back to some kind of like association graph or interest graph, like if Tayyab's minting a bunch of Arsenal NFTs, right? Or like things he's doing related to Arsenal, you can imagine he's an Arsenal fan, right? People should be able to connect over those things, I think, in the physical world as well. And so, yeah, I don't know how we get there necessarily or what that looks like. I think there's like a couple of things that I know we could build that I'm building to try to do that. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just think that the internet so far, right, because you have companies that want to lock the data down and they don't want you to, they want to keep it kind of locked up for their own ability to make money, like Facebook, for example, right? It becomes harder to use that in interesting new ways to connect people. Like Highlight was a great example of this. Highlight was the startup that Paul Davison did before Clubhouse. They tried to get people to connect in the physical world over Facebook interests. Like when you used to go and say like, I like this band or I like this movie. And eventually Facebook kind of like, they didn't technically kill them, but they kind of like killed them. And like, because you have that hold on data, it's very hard to build services like that, I think. And so if Ethereum is this giant graph that no one owns, it's public, maybe we can start to build more stuff like that. I think that's a really cool opportunity. And I think communities will form from that, or we'll use that to form, right? Like a Barry's. Like I think Barry's is actually a really good example of like a community that would use this.